Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your co-host, Kieren Lefebvre, joined with black belt gym owner, the great and powerful Adam Child.
Stop calling me great and powerful.
It's a Joe Rogan reference. Come on.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, yeah. He always, whenever he introduces a guest.
I'm surprised I don't know that.
I'm not surprised.
To a lot of Joe Rogan.
No, you don't. Yeah, so anytime he introduces a guest, he's like, the great and powerful fucking whoever it is, right? No matter who it is. So.
Does he now, like, is it something that regardless of the guest, it's become a thing,
yes.
similar to Bernardo, who makes an effort now to say it's a huge honor.
Yeah, exactly. You know? It's a shtick, right? It's a line.
Right.
It's a one-liner from Joe Rogan. So everyone that is listening, you know, they probably know what I'm talking about.
So this whole time you've been taking a dig at me, and I've just been like, Kieren.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, I'm not that great and powerful. Every time, like, yeah, got the fucker.
Right. What's up,
bro?
Welcome
to the podcast, everyone. What's up, Adam? Today, we are talking about how to destroy a larger opponent in jiu-jitsu. So how to beat that larger person that, you know, takes advantage of their physical gifts of being bigger than you to just squish and squash you. We're going to talk about how to deal with that.
It's a tough one. I don't know. I'm going to have to make it up because there's no one bigger than me.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't know how you're going to answer this because you're fucking massive, dude.
I'm a fat shit.
I can probably answer this better than you can because I don't think you've ever faced up against someone that's significantly larger.
Eric's pretty big.
Eric's about the same size as you.
Yeah, I actually fought a guy back at Blue Belt who... God, I can't remember his actual name. I think maybe Louise was his name. Anyway, it's not relevant for the story. What's more relevant is to give you an idea of how big this guy was. His nickname and like his fight name, the way he would, you know, when they call out over the PA, your opponent, like he was always called out by his nickname, which was Avatar. Like, because this was around the time of
the big
Avatar
blue,
movie.
Big blue bastards.
Yeah, like
right.
If you remember from the movie, the size of the avatars in comparison to the humans, right? They were massive.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I should try. I have like one photo of me with him. So much, like huge.
How'd the fight go?
Well, it was quite funny because we both won in our respective divisions. This selectives competition in São Paulo, and if you had to get invited to fight that. Well, no, you didn't have to get invited. You had to score enough points throughout the year to qualify for this competition, and then if you won that competition, you got your flights paid for to go to the Pan Ams in LA. So we both won our respective divisions, and so we were on the same flight. And we got to chatting, like we were both the biggest dudes, but he's significantly larger than me. And he didn't really speak any English. So I sort of, you know, got us the emergency exit row seats. And this was before the time where you just paid for them. You know, this was sort of like back when they would, you know, airlines didn't use it as a way to make money. They would actually reserve it for emergencies and, you know, put the appropriate people in the seats. So I got a emergency exit row seat. So, you know, we got to know each other and stuff. And then even at the Pan Ams, I would help, like, you know, he spoke no English, so he didn't even understand like where he had to go to weigh in and all that sort of stuff. So we kind of became friends. For those who don't know, at the bigger IBJJF competitions, to fight the absolute division, you have to make the podium in your weight division. It's not like these small local competitions, at least here in Australia, where you just can register for absolute. These comps, you need to qualify for absolute. And so we both podiumed in our respective divisions. So we both qualified for absolute. And then we had to fight each other in the absolute. And we're like, oh, like, you know, we weren't teammates or anything, you know, but we'd still sort of become friends. And it was a tough fight. Did he pull guard or did I pull guard? I pulled guard. Because the classic, like, oh, I'm against this bigger dude.
I'm pulling guard.
I don't want to like deal with his legs. And again, this is at a time where now smaller fighters, I consider to be better guard players. You know, previously it was like big, long legs because it was all a bit more sort of like closed guard and stuff back then. It wasn't as dynamic, and open guard and inverting and all that didn't really exist. So, So I pulled guard, and God, I can't remember how the fight went. I remember he almost passed, and then at some stage, I don't know. I didn't sweep him, but I ended up in his closed guard somehow. So I don't know if we stood back up, then he pulled guard, and he almost swept me and couldn't. And I just remember it was a ref's decision.
Oh, wow.
So I won the fight. I don't believe there were any points scored. Maybe there was, I don't even think there were advantages scored. I think it was 0 across the board, but there was a lot of like almost. And actually, no, yeah, now I remember a lot of it was my sort of relentless attempts to continually pass. And I never did pass, otherwise there would have been points. And yeah, and I won the decision. But that's probably not the situation we think of when we think of how to beat a bigger opponent, because in that case, when we typically think a bigger opponent, I think most people default to thinking about like a bigger, stronger, heavier opponent, whereas myself and this guy, Avatar, are both like tall and thin, you know, so we're kind of like Stefan Struves, if you will, just like big, lanky people, not usually what people think about when they think how to beat a bigger opponent. So before I go into my advice as to how to beat a bigger opponent, and we can go into how to beat a bigger, lankier opponent, and I'll tell you how to beat myself. It's not that hard. So you started off by saying you think you would have
better advice.
Better advice.
No, I don't think I'd have better advice from yourself. But I do have advice that.
But I mean, you're not. I mean, you're not.
Sometimes
you're
I'm
not
a bigger guy.
Exactly. I was going to say. Like, I guess you're. Well, I mean, you fight.
For context, I'm 85 kilos. I fight at 85 kilos. Walking around, I'm anywhere between 82 and 87, depending on the week.
Yeah, so you're pretty much middleweight.
I am.
In other words, you're in the middle.
I think I'm light.
No, you're not lightweight.
Light heavyweight.
Well, that light heavy is 88.
Yeah.
So and then middleweight's 82.
I'm 88.
So yeah, light heavy.
Yeah.
No, sorry, not light heavy, medium heavy. It's
medium heavy. Yeah. Sorry, medium. Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
so you're kind of in the middle.
Yeah,
so
and I'm about 5'10". So
yeah, so you're going to have times
wider
guys bigger than you, and times where the person's smaller than you.
Exactly.
And I mean, look, even for me, it happens too. Like we've got one of the black belts in the gym, Carl. He's bigger than me.
Yeah.
Not as tall as me, because I'm.
He's got a lot of size.
6'4".
Yeah.
You know, I'm like 194 centimeters.
Yeah.
So I'm tall, but I'm not like big. Whereas Carl,
he's pretty tall and big.
Carl looks like a Viking.
Yeah, he's like 6'1", 6'2" maybe, and he's fucking wide.
He's just like a big human,
massive chest.
How do you beat bigger people?
I don't roll with Carl.
Yeah,
no, I do. So I think
here are Kieren's top 10 tips for avoiding partners.
Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I used to do with rolling with bigger guys, parroting off what you said, it's almost instinct to want to pull guard against a larger person, not to have to wrestle with them, because if I'm trying to wrestle with a bigger guy, I'm going to use a lot of energy. Even if I do manage to get the takedown somehow, I'm going to use a lot of energy. And yeah, I am going to be on top. But a lot of the time, I do opt to pull guard or a variation thereof, or go for like a sneaky pull guard to sweep or something like that.
Do you think that's instinctive to what? Like I get
to be on the bottom.
Yeah. I think it makes sense to not want to wrestle and stand up with a larger opponent.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessarily instinctive to think, I want to be on. If we
on
really look at the extremes, like
it's instinctive, but it's not intelligent.
Well, I don't know. Like if we're looking at a 55 kilo guy and a 100 kilo guy, you would think you quite instinctively think, I don't want to be underneath that dude.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, but I think we'll get into that. But moving on, I think if I do pull guard, not letting the bigger person settle in. A lot of times you look over and I'm like copping a hectic crossface or some shit. And you're like, why'd you let him settle in? And what we mean by settle in is if you had a bigger guy on top of you that whatever, they pass your guard or something like that, and you're allowing them to just settle into their position, like get a heavy ass crossface and just use all of their weight, every single pound, every single kilo of their weight advantage against you, and you've allowed that, then you've pretty much done the worst thing that you could do. You just gave the biggest advantage they have, and then put them in a position when they can make full use of that advantage. So, I mean, it's easier said than done, but if you start thinking that no matter what, you cannot let this big dude settle in on top of you, then you start to create opportunities. And this has also led me to another habit that I'd formed, which was my do nothing and then do everything habit. And what I mean by that is letting people settle in and then trying to explode out of the position. Now, exploding out of the position can be good. Like being explosive in jiu-jitsu can be quite effective, particularly to escape. But there needs to be a middle ground when you're not exploding, if you know what I mean. Not just let them do whatever the fuck they want and then explode, because then you've put yourself in an even worse position.
I'm confused. So are you saying this is a good thing that you do?
No, it's terrible.
Do nothing, then explode?
No, it's bad. Because,
right, okay, yes.
Because then I just let them consolidate, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I can explode out. And then I've let them consolidate into a stronger position where I can't explode out of. So I need to be like not letting them settle in, right? Even if it's just smaller movements, less explosive, so less energy, like not go fucking like bananas, but not let them just get whatever they want. Like actually actively work to improve my position and then explode once I can.
This is a perfect time for me to give an analogy. And
Please.
We know that's why people tune in.
Analogy, Adam.
I
got a message on Instagram specifically referencing your beautiful analogies. And they said, I love a good analogy, so therefore I love analogy, Adam.
Yeah, right. I love that. I love you, person on Instagram. who sent that to Kieren.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think people don't message you on Instagram about the podcast because you operate your business Instagram. You don't have a personal Instagram.
I don't have a personal Instagram.
They can't find you. They're not. I don't think they're comfortable messaging a gym.
Why don't just message the podcast? See,
That's a good question.
This has come up because
Fuck, you got me there.
Look, the reason this is a relevant conversation is because multiple times, if you guys look at the artwork for the podcast, maybe some of you have noticed, maybe some of you haven't, but on the podcast artwork, Kieren has a white belt on, because when we started the podcast, Kieren was a white belt. He's now a blue belt. And Kieren has told me multiple times, oh man, this person messaged me. They said we got to change the artwork to me having a blue belt.
It's like
this guy messaged. And then he'll show me the messages, but I'm like, man, that's on your Instagram. That evidence is inadmissible. You know, no one is messaging the podcast Instagram
This
saying,
is some kangaroo court shit, man. You just make shit up.
I'm like, no one is messaging the podcast saying, why doesn't Kieren have a blue belt on? You know, I'm like, it's all this. Kieren's like, someone messaged me. I'm like, bullshit, Kieren. You just said was like, called your mum and be like, Mum, send me a message on Instagram.
All right, this is a call out for our Beyond Jiu-Jitsu army out there to message our Instagram about the blue belt. And then when we flood it, Adam will have to concede.
Well, then I'll like always add something. I'll be like, no, Kieren, you got to tap me first or something. Okay. I mean, actually, all jokes aside, you're the one that you're the one who has the skills to change it to blue anyway, whereas I don't. Like, I can't really.
For a second there, I thought you were about to say, all jokes aside, you're the one that has the skills to tap me. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Jesus. Well done.
Okay.
Is my face going red?
Yeah, but no, I don't have a personal Instagram. So message the podcast one.
Okay.
There is, as far as I'm concerned, there is zero evidence to change.
Okay. Well, evidence is coming, so stand by for that.
Wait, I didn't give my analogy though.
Please
Let's
do.
go back.
Please give your analogy.
So you were talking about, do nothing, then explode or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you would know I like to talk a lot with analogies because it's, I think it's a really good way to find it to click and make sense for people. Like one of the ones that I always give when I'm talking about, I don't know, any position where you're on top and you need to actively hold the person down. I quite often ask students like, oh, has anyone here ridden a horse before? And I mean, I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in the country. I, used to ride horses, race horses. My mum still races horses and still has.
You raced horses?
Well, yeah, sorry, race. Not as in like the Melbourne Cup race horses,
right.
but
I was
like
just imagining you in a little jocky saddle.
no.
You're as big as a horse, mate.
yeah. I used to race them. I was like, ready, set, go. I was legging it.
Running next to him.
Yeah, and most people say no because they're from the city. But, it's just like for anyone who has ridden a horse and you say to them, oh, yeah, cool, so you've ridden a horse, it's like doing a seated trot. And they're like, oh, like it instantly makes sense the way you have to move. So that's why I like analogies. Talking about doing nothing and doing something, there are times that you can do nothing, or there are times, positions that you need to rest and recover. But even when you're doing nothing, you're never actually doing nothing. If you think about it like rock climbing, a lot of people have at least gone to an indoor rock climbing center or something. If you're doing a big enough wall, there are points you'll need to take a break, right? When you're doing, a 45-degree overhang, that's probably not the time you take a break, right? Like if you're in the middle of if you're on a hold that is only like, your big toe on one little, edge and then you're crimping 3 fingers on the other, like that's not where you can rest. Like when do you rest? Well, when you get really good, comfortable holds that don't require too much energy. But even then, when you're taking a rest, you're not doing nothing, because if you did nothing,
you would
fall off the wall.
Yeah.
Like, unless it's like you're climbing actual outdoor rock climbing and there's a massive ledge that you can lay down on, like you're never, even when you're resting, you're still holding onto the wall. So, and it's the same in jiu-jitsu. There are times that you can rest, but even when you're resting, you're active, right? So the do nothing and then explode, like even when you're doing nothing, you still have to be doing stuff, if that makes sense, right? Think if you ever actually do nothing, you'll fall off the wall. So even if you get side control top on someone or you mount someone, right? And you're like, okay, now I need to take a bit of a rest because I just spent 7 minutes working really hard to pass this dude's guard and I need some time to recover. You need to still be active. Yeah. So maybe your active rest is
smothering.
And maybe it's 10% output or 15% output. It's going to depend on you and your cardio and whatever.
Whenever I am in that position where I'm on top and I am going for a air quotes rest, I try to make my rest as uncomfortable as possible for the person on bottom.
That's right. Yeah. As long as your recovery is quicker than theirs. And what I mean, obviously it's not as cut and dry as that because, biologically some people are going to be fitter or recover quicker or whatever. But if we imagine that everyone recovers at the same rate, like as long as you're putting out less effort than they are and therefore you're recovering quicker, then it's an even trade-off. So you might only be putting out 50% effort. Maybe you're still putting out 50% effort. But if we look at it just as 0 to 100, you're putting out 50, so you're recovering 50, right? But they're putting out 60 and only recovering 40. Like it's still a good trade.
Yeah, I totally agree.
There's never going to be a time where you're like, I'm putting out 0 and recovering 100 and they're putting out 100 and recovering 0. Like it's... What the fuck do you think this is?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, that makes sense.
The initial do nothing then explode out. Bad, Kieren.
Yeah, bad. But I've gotten rid of that habit. I've gotten rid of that habit just through realizing, and that this has come through versing bigger opponents. So it helped me identify a weakness in my game, or not even like quote my game, but my mentality of being in certain positions. Yeah. So now incrementally working is my go-to. So that's point number 1 that I had for trying to beat bigger opponents. I only have 2 more. They're quick. So point number 2 was leveraging the other person's movements. So particularly when you're up against a larger person and you are on top, if the weight difference is large enough, they should be able to just buck you off with, unless you can really leverage your weight over, to pin their shoulders onto the mat. Now, the example I'm giving here is if you're in like side control, even north-south, something like that, you're going to have a very hard time just pinning them down and like big manning them, right? You can't big man the big man.
Yeah.
So what I mean by leveraging their movements, if they go to buck you off, take an arm, take their back, use their movements against them, because you can't really, air quotes, stop them. So just leverage them and take advantage of them. And a lot of the time that would look like if you are in north-south, because I like that position a lot lately because I can get a Kimura there. That's my go-to thing at the moment is, if I can't progress from side control to mount, I go north-south and hunt the Kimura.
Do you know what the north-south position is called in Portuguese?
Send it. 69?
Yeah, I'm not making
way.
it up. Yeah, it's called meia nove, which means 69.
Yeah. Well, it is a 6'9".
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, but like imagine,
Sort
like,
of.
it's funny, like the translation. It's funny, anyone who speaks another language or multiple languages would agree. Like, it's funny the things that, in one language, if you're at a point where you're fluent enough in another language, you can just switch to that mode of thinking where things like saying, all right, guys, we're going to go round to 69. Like, it doesn't sound weird if I say that in Portuguese because I've switched that part of my brain on. But it is funny the things in different languages, how you can say this, but oh man, like, oh, that in English. No, bro, you can't, you can't say that.
Can't say that. Yeah. So north-south. So again, the example of if I was in side control or even north-south, whatever, and they go to turn, take their arm.
Makes the north-south choke sound way kinkier.
69 choke.
The 69 choke. But funnily, no, it's still called a north-south choke.
Most of the time when I'm in 69, I'm choking.
Oh, God.
PG-13. Okay. This is going to affect our advertisement.
Good point. What's the third one?
Yep. Is... Again, when you're going for stand-up, this is very, very specific, and this is something that I've been able to pull off a couple of times of bigger opponents, but not as consistently as I would like. It's more like a trick. So if you are going to, say, for example, you do want to end up on top, right? They are bigger than you, but you still want to end up in top to not get squished by them, and maybe your guard shit is to...
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe is to... they might be expecting you to pull guard because maybe that's what happens to them. Like smaller opponents pull guard against them, so they're expecting it. So use that to your advantage by faking a guard pull and going for an ankle pick or going for a guard pull and tripod sweep. So try to leverage the fact that you know that they know you're going to pull guard or probably.
So starting to go on the sort of, the
fucking
the mental battle.
Yes, exactly. It's leverage, again, it's kind of leveraging their expectation against them. And a good example of the ankle pick I'm talking about is Jordan Teacher's Jiu Jitsu has like a little short of like fake ankle pick against larger opponent and literally just sits down, the guy steps forward and he just ankle picks. It's so easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's so many different variations of ankle picking.
Yeah, so all of that is good sound advice. I'm going to try put it just in a different way of digesting it, which to give my advice on how to beat bigger opponents. And yeah, I'm a big person, but I have spent a lot of time training with bigger opponents. I used to train regularly with Leo Nogueira, who's bigger than me, Bernardo Faria, who's bigger than me.
Big dude.
Another guy called Batista, who is one of Fabio's best black belts of all time. Unfortunately, never won the worlds at black belt, but he was one of those guys that, in the gym would just make other world champions look like shit. He just unfortunately never reached that level in competition. So I've trained with a lot of people that are bigger than me. So starting standing and against the bigger opponent, and when again, thinking about bigger opponent, I'm thinking that sort of 50, 55 kilo person against the 90, 100 kilo person. Realistically, you're shit out of luck and you have to pull guard, right? You're not going to take them down, right? If the chances of them pulling guard is probably pretty slim. It could happen. But there's been plenty of examples in not recent competitions, but as of 2022. Within the last few years, there's been plenty of examples of seeing this. Lucas Lepre fighting Absolute, Mikey Musumeci fighting Absolute,
Lachlan Giles
fighting Absolute in ADCC. There's that guy who was just on Who's Number One, known as the Giant Slayer, right? He just fought Mikey Musumeci on Who's Number One, but he goes in every Absolute division. So there's plenty of examples of smaller guys fighting bigger guys, and you'll see that they kind of always pull guard because they're not going to take the bigger guy down. Maybe they could. Maybe the little dude's a Division 1 wrestler, but most people aren't. So you shit out of luck, you have to pull guard. Right? So get on board with that. When you're then playing guard against the bigger opponent, how do you just not get smushed by them? Okay. I'm going to try put it into some simple ways for you to think about it, because I don't want to talk about specific techniques because everyone's going to be different, but obviously you need mechanically sound frames. And what I mean by mechanically sound frames is think about scaffolding, right? Like scaffolding that goes on a building or anything that's just like, if you were to build a tower out of paddle pop sticks, where it's kind of just these structures and everything kind of meets at right angles, and, building scaffolding is a very sound, basic skeleton structure, right?
Yeah.
Well, your body's literally a skeleton. You kind of need to make sure your frames, think about your frames almost like scaffolding, right? It needs to be this skeleton structure that is sound. But if one piece of scaffolding were removed, the entire structure would collapse, right? So that's the way I think about my frames. You obviously need your frames because then, it's not like your 50 kilo frame is necessarily going to support a 150 kilo dude, but your frames can cop more when they're mechanically sound. They can cop more weight than you probably realize they can. Okay. But more importantly than that, it's against the bigger guys, the fundamental concept, and this goes for whatever position you're in, is using your attributes against their attributes. What do I mean by that? Well, you briefly touched on it. If you try to big man the big man, you're going to lose, man. You're not going to win that matchup. Same so what are the smaller person's attributes? Well, they're typically your agility and speed, right? So if the big man tried to go toe-to-toe with the small person in some fast, quick, scrambly style match, the big dude's probably going to lose, right? The big guy is trying to control you, use their size and strength to dictate the match. So you as the smaller person, it's your responsibility to be quick and fast and use angles the same way that in an MMA matchup, if it's a striker against a grappler, like the grappler doesn't go in being like, oh, well, I'm just going to strike and go toe-to-toe with this guy. No, it's about they have two different skill sets and they're trying to take the fight to that position where their skill sets can shine and use that against their opponent. And I think Cobrinha said it in an interview years ago, or it might have even been Hodger. It was, one of the big names, and it was addressing when people say, oh, you're so big, you use too much strength, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, man, like piss off. Like I'm big and strong and it's one of my attributes. Complaining that a big, strong person uses their strength is like complaining that a 50 kilo person is too fast, or someone who's, crazy flexible is, oh man, you're using too much flexibility. Oh man, you're using too much agility. Or you're using too much of your, God-given talent to have double jointed shoulders and you should have tapped. Or that's a stupid example, but like strength is a physical attribute as well, right? And all these physical attributes you will, so obviously naturally you have a given amount, right? But they can all be increased, right? Like you can make yourself stronger. You can't change your size, obviously, and I mean
your height.
Or yeah, that's what I
width.
mean, right? Yeah, you can't change your height, and let's say in the in the context of what I'm trying to explain, you can't change your weight. We know you can put on weight and lose weight, but I mean, you can't go from being a 50 kilo human to a 100 kilo human. Like, I know you're looking at me, Kieren, like ex-bodybuilder, yeah, right? But
No,
you
I'm
know,
more thinking just obesity, but
yeah, or obesity. But in the context of what I'm saying, you
Yes.
get what I'm
No, I
saying,
totally
right?
get
Like,
what you're saying.
imagine you don't want to change weight divisions.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you change your weight or your height, but you can increase your strength, you can increase your agility, you can increase your flexibility. But obviously, like, there's limits depending on your base attributes, right? So, like, if me and the Giant Slayer decide, you know, we're going to increase our agility, I'll probably, whatever his max agility is, my max agility is not going to catch his. Just fucking physics, right? Like, I mean, I'm 100 kilos, he's like 50, you know, and conversely, like, that's the same with size and strength, you know. Yeah, he could, as strong as he can
never be able to be as strong as you can be.
Without, you know, staying in his weight division, he can get stronger, but he'll never get as strong as me without, turning into a fucking, what's that dude? The bodybuilder who looks like, I think he's retired now, Heath something?
Oh, yeah, Heath Ledger.
No, that's
No, you're talking about Phil Heath.
Phil Heath, right? Yeah, like, you know, without turning into a Phil Heath, he's, you know, he can't get as strong as me. Okay, so it's always going to be, if you're the smaller dude in the matchup, your base attributes, you're always going to be like faster and more agile than the big dude, right? So you have to really, like David Goliath. I remember I was rolling with Malfacini.
Who's Malfacini?
Where's he? There we go. Yeah, I need to have access to these buttons too. I don't know which does which. If I had leant over, I probably just would have played the outro song.
You look like, stop the recording.
Yeah. Bruno Malfacini, are you being serious? Or no? Or
nah, be serious. Like, who? Come on, man. We got white belts listening to this.
Oh, yeah, but Kieren, I expect more from you. See, this is why he's still a white belt on the rocket.
I also got a message on Instagram recently saying, you know so much for a white belt. I need to step up my game.
Oh,
like,
well,
so I'm impressed. Right.
Bruno
Damn it.
Bruno Malfacini, from the same gym as me, he recently lost to Mikey in the finals of the Worlds last year. But Malfacini is like the best rooster weight. God, now I'm like questioning my knowledge. But people go on about like Buchecha being like, 13-time world champion. I'm not taking anything away from Buchecha, but he's 13 world titles across 2 divisions, like his weight division and the absolute division. Right. Whereas Malfacini is a 10-time world champion at weight. In other words, like, he's won worlds for 10 years, right? Whereas, like,
that's unfortunate that maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm trying to like blame my lack of knowledge on some other force. But do you think that lighter weights don't get as much attention as heavier weights?
100%. I mean, they are now because the smaller guys
have their own game styles.
That is becoming
super unique.
Well, yeah, not necessarily unique, but just, you know, their ability to like invert and attack the legs and stuff. And, you know, it's awesome and it's super entertaining. But yeah, they don't get as much recognition because they really can't compete in absolute, right? You know, often when you first get into jiu-jitsu, you're told the story of it was designed to beat the bigger, larger opponent, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but any martial art, when you're talking about self-defense is always off the basis that the attacker or the aggressor doesn't know how to fight, right? Or doesn't know how to fight
jiu-jitsu,
the art form that you're going to use to protect yourself. So, you know, when you are talking about like the 1% jiu-jitsu fighters, like the best guys in the world that are all just as technical and knowledgeable about jiu-jitsu, and the only factor that's differentiating these two people is that dude's 30 kilos heavier, like, it makes a difference.
Completely.
Right? So, you know, Lepri has competed in the absolute, so has Musameshi, and they've done well, right? But yeah, as a whole, they don't get as much recognition, because it's even like people have asked, why doesn't Malfacini do ADCC? It's because he's too light. There's no divisions that really give him a chance to shine because he's too small.
Right, so 66 would be like one of their lightest divisions, I think.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Men.
And he's like, man, he's a tiny human. But anyway, the story, I was going back to using your attributes. I was rolling with Malfacini years ago, so long ago. This is back in Brazil. And he was on the bottom. He had De La Riva. He was holding onto my ankle. And I stripped the grip by you kind of turn away a little bit so your foot's facing in the direction that their grip opens, and you kick out, right, to break the grip on your ankle. And then you square back up. I did that against Malfacini, and he was so fast that excuse me. He was so fast that when I broke the grip, before my foot could touch back on the ground, he was already standing up, double legging me. So fast, right? If he just tried to muscle me, imagine if he tried to sit up on a single leg when I'm nice and planted and square, it's going to be like, man, he's not getting up. It's the size and strength difference is way too great. But he's using his agility. Okay, so that goes in with you saying don't let them settle in. You're kind of forced to pull guard, but then you have to use your attributes against them. It's the same for me when I roll with Big Carl, right? Carl's like a Viking. When he passes, he refuses to get off his knees, right? So, yeah, you can maybe go K-guard and get in under the legs. Of course, it's always a possibility, but it's a lot of work. He's got a really heavy base. But even though I'm a big guy, in that matchup, I'm the smaller, more agile guy, right? That's the other really important point is you have to look at the matchup, and maybe you're a little dude, but in that matchup, you're the big, strong guy. Then you have to recognize that your base attributes against this particular opponent, that you're big and strong. So against Carl, I'm small and quick, but against you, I'm not, right? Yeah. I mean, I can still run circles around you, but I'm not.
I don't think it's got to do with speed difference. That's something else there. I think you're cheating.
Yeah. I'm friends with the ref.
Yeah, that's it.
So when I roll with Carl and I pull guard, I use my speed, my agility, my angles, and I often collar drag / arm drag him and get up round to his back, opposed to doing a more traditional sweep that I would do it's you or someone closer to my weight.
Yeah, that arm drag's pretty effective against larger guys. Hey?
Yeah, arm drag or collar drag in the gi, really good because you're faster than them, by the time, even if it's not the most beautiful arm drag, by the time you do it, just the sheer time it takes them to square back up, you're already round the corner, round at their back, So that is the core fundamental concept of using your attributes, in this case as the smaller person, against a bigger person. The next thing you said, when you're on top, kind of, realizing that you can't hold them down, so take what they give you, when they bridge and explode, take their arm or whatever.
Yeah, you got to be ready to float.
Yep, for sure, right? I don't disagree with that at all. That goes hand in hand with, using your attributes. So when they do bridge and roll or whatever to escape mount, you're really quick that you can dive on that arm quicker than they're probably expecting, quicker than someone their size could do it. But I do just want to help people understand that depending on the weight difference, you may be able to hold them down. Some people listening have maybe trained with a 50, 60 kilo person who feels like they're 100 kilos, and I definitely have. And there's something really special that they're doing that makes them so heavy, right? Because you can be little and heavy. 50 kilo person mounted on a 100 kilo person, okay, maybe not going to be able to retain mount, right? It's a very big weight difference. But sometimes, that 70 kilo person against 100 kilos, they should be able to retain mount, right? And what is that person doing to feel like they're 100 kilos? It's about being able to put your 70 kilos on a dime, right? And you have to know, and that dime is dynamic and changes all the time, okay? This is to give you a physical example that you can do that represents this, right? Get a partner and get them to lie down like side control on the bottom, right? And you're not going to go side control. They're just lying on their back, okay? You're to their side, and you're going to put all your weight on your hands on their near side shoulder, right? Just on the shoulder, almost like your hands as if you were giving CPR, right? Just put both your hands on that one shoulder, on their shoulder closest to you, and pretty much go into a push-up position almost. So you've got like almost all your weight going through your hands onto that one shoulder that's closest to you. And now ask that person on the bottom to turn to their side, right? Not hip escape or anything. Just get their back off the mat. Just turn up on their side towards you. They'll do it easily, right? They'll be able to turn onto their side very easily because that weight is irrelevant and it's not useful. Now do the exact same thing, but put your weight on the far shoulder and ask them to turn onto their side. And they won't be able to do it, right? It's because it's understanding that in that particular position, like if I put 100 kilos on your leg, it's not going to stop you taking your shoulders off the mat, right? But if I put 100 kilos on that one shoulder, or even less, 50 kilos on that one shoulder, for you to turn onto your side, you need to take that shoulder off the mat. So understanding where to put your weight and when is what makes you really heavy. So you get a good 50 kilo black belt. They understand that. And obviously it's super dynamic. It depends a lot on the position. But when they can put their 50 kilos there and then move it there and move it there, that's why it feels like you can't get them off you, right? Whereas if they just kept it static, like, I'm just going to smush you, you're just going to be able to roll them off or bench press them off, So sometimes you can hold down the bigger opponent. You just don't quite yet have whether you didn't have the knowledge of understanding the mechanics of holding someone down, or you're not quite yet, it's not autonomous enough for you to put the weight where you need to put it in the given situation. Short of that, then I agree with you. If you can't hold them down, for sure, like, Marcelo Garcia, famous for saying, how am I expected to take someone's back if I keep them pinned? How am I going to take their back if I don't let them move? Yeah. Right. So smaller people, that's again going back to using your attributes. But I like what you said, kind of understanding that you may not be able to stop them from moving. Right. So embrace the fact that you can't hold them down and let them move and then take their back or take their arm or whatever it is. Like everything has a trade-off. They can't move in a certain way and defend 100%
of everything. Yeah. Particularly if you're expecting it and you're allowing it.
Yeah. Sorry, as the smaller person, right? Exactly, right? Because you're already that step ahead. Yeah. You're 100%. You're waiting for that movement to happen. Okay. So you kind of have to get on board with pulling guard. It's going for an ankle pick, it's not a bad idea, right? If you really do want to be on top. But if we're looking at the Mikey Musumeci versus, Muhammad Ali or who, whatever.
He's going to pull guard.
You kind of got to pull guard. I mean, it helps that Mikey's a guard player. Yeah. But, he's just not going to take him down, or the chance of it happening is super slim. And you want to play the odds.
The risk versus reward just isn't quite there, is it?
That's right. And I mean, look, it's not impossible that the bigger person pulls guard. It could happen, right? But
what about dealing with someone that may not necessarily be heavier than you, but that's fucking tall?
What do we do against the tall people? Your legs are just so long. I'll keep this one short. I didn't even mean to. That was good. So I'll keep it snappy. Again, I'll give you a very simple analogy, and it's about distance control, right? if, let's say because this happens a lot, you'll be the same weight, right?
Yeah.
But you got the
taller,
the short, stocky, strong dude and the tall guy. Think about it in boxing, right? You get the matchup where you've got they're the same weight, but the short, stocky dude and then the long guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think you need to know much about boxing to know what the game plan is.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, the tall guy is going to be
range.
Control with range. Ideally, his opponent never even makes it past his jab.
Yep.
Right. Whereas, what's the short guy trying
Sit
to do?
in the
Get
pocket.
it. Yeah.
Yep.
Get on the inside.
Yep.
Right. Get inside the tall guy's effective range. And it's, you know, jiu-jitsu is more dynamic than that, but it is the same sort of thing, right? Me as a taller person, if someone gets in the pocket on that inside, so they clear my knee line. I talk about this a lot with my students when it comes to passing, where you're trying to operate in between the knee and the hips until you can then progress further. If you can get past the foot, shin, and knee, right? That's sort of, if you can get past that knee line, you're then on the inside.
Right.
Okay. And so for someone like me, my size, even though I'm also quite flexible, I've got really good hip mobility for someone my size. I'm quite good at pummeling legs in and stuff. It is a lot of work, right? For once someone is on the inside, for me to regain to get a knee back in, like to the space required for me, if I lose my knee shield, the space required for me to get it back in, right, is really hard. Or if someone goes for double unders, the space I need to pummel my leg back in, I need way more space than someone your size or smaller needs. You know, I'm sure people have rolled with people who are way smaller than them. They've passed them to side control, and then the person just goes ship and just slips their shin back across your belly. And you're like, what the hell? Right? So, whereas for me, man, I need a huge amount of space to do your typical re-guarding from side control escape. Because it's, you know, so that it's about the distance control. That's what you really need to think about, right?
So you need to get inside, operate, if this is your passing style. So for me, it would be to operate between the knee and the hip. And once you get there, close down the space. And it's about that battle.
Yeah,
of course.
And then once you get like, you're in the knee to hip range, then you start getting closer to just being in the hip range, to the belly, to the, you know.
To consolidate your position.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest problem, particularly with dealing with you, is you know that I'm going for that. So then you make it very difficult to get past your shins.
Yes,
Which is your job in the
exactly,
fight.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, so I won't mind getting, again, because it is more dynamic than striking. Sorry, all the strikers out there. I don't mind getting compressed, as in having, like, bearing your weight on my shins with my knees to my chest, because that's fine. Like, I'm compressed.
But you're still protected.
That's right. I'm still protected. I still have very sound scaffolding frames, right? But yeah, it's once those shins get cleared, then it's hard work. You know, so something like stack passes or over-under passes, or even knee cuts where you sit in your opponent's lap, right, are really hard to defend as a bigger person, right? A bigger person is in, we're talking about, you might be the same weight, but the taller person.
Right.
If you're then the guard player, right, against the taller person, man, you got to realize they naturally, like, just because of their size, naturally there is a lot more space for you to work. It is a lot easier to get in under the legs, right? I tried to heel hook, sound terrible. I tried to heel hook one of the kids the other week. You know, one of our kids, Ellie, who's a teenager and helps out in the kids' classes, and he's on that cusp of going from, you know, training in the kids' classes to training in the adult classes. But he's a small kid, and, you know, Ellie's trained with me for years, so we've got a really good relationship, and, you know, we play around a lot. But I just like messing around, and his dad trains jiu-jitsu and stuff, so his dad beats him up all the time in a caring way. But I just like friendly tried to heel hook him. Man, impossible. Like his heel was so small, like I couldn't, I just couldn't catch it. It was just like every time just just like slipped out, right? But so it's really easy when I get heel hooked, my heel is massive. Like people don't even have to dig the heel against me. They just go, oh, You know, even when my toe is pointed like, you know, the best ballerina in the world, my heel's still massive.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, well, if you're the smaller dude against the tall guy, right, they give you a lot more space in under their legs when they're passing, just naturally. It's just, you know, but then on top of that, you also then need to add your attributes. So even if we are the same weight, but one tall, one short and stocky or whatever, yeah, you have to be leveraging your attributes. Me as the taller person, yeah, I'm doing a lot of distance control. I'm making sure you don't clear my knee line, right? Whether I'm trying to stretch you out or whether I'm just making sure I keep my knees to my chest so I've got my, you know, my scaffolding frame and whatever. And you're using your attributes, which is that you are stronger and faster and you don't need as much space and you can tighten in, you know, and you can compress a bit better than I can compress, right? And so it's the combination of all those factors. Okay? And then you add on top of that, well, it depends like what techniques do you drill? What are you good at? What are you bad at? It's not as simple as, oh, do this.
Yeah. It can be very interesting when you come up against your counter, but you're also their counter. It's not like rock, paper, scissors. It's kind of like, you know, you're each other's kryptonite. For example, when I roll with a guy, trains our gym, blue belt Toby, his game is leveraging his long legs and, you know, getting in with those triangles, getting in with that really, really dynamic open guard. Whereas my game is, and he wears similar weight, but he's the taller person. It's exactly the same matchup we're talking about, where I'm a lot shorter, but similar weight, cause stocky and like a bit strong. So whenever we roll, it becomes that battle. Who can win that first exchange will dictate essentially the fight, so to speak. Yeah, our roles are more dynamic than that, but it's very, very difficult me dealing with that shin guard, and he finds it very, very difficult dealing with just relentless pressure. So it's so interesting that it's they counter each other.
It's also funny when you're a bit more at the extremes of the spectrums in terms of, you know, for me being a bigger, taller guy, it's always really annoying to come up against another big, tall guy. Yeah. Because then it's like I've spent years being the bigger, taller guy and my whole game is developed around how do I beat someone who's like short and stocky, right? And then now I come up against a bigger, taller guy that typical, oh, I stretch them out from X guard and do this, and then I do it against that guy, and then I'm like, oh, he's still standing up, right? Because he's big, you know, he's tall enough. That's quite funny when that happens. It's like in boxing, right? Yeah, they, you know, southpaw boxers spend the majority of their careers like boxing against orthodox boxers. That sometimes they can be thrown for a bit of a loop when they come up against another southpaw, you know? So that can be funny as well.
Yeah, a mirror matchup is also difficult. I've competed mostly in no-gi, actually, ironically enough, against like dudes that identical mirror matchup, obviously with the same weight, but same weight, like same strength, same height. It's like looking across like a long-haired blonde version of myself. I'm like, fuck. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. One in particular stands out. It was fucking tough.
Which one was that?
It was a no-gi fight in the quarterfinals of that comp where I think it was AJP where I came second in that bracket. It was, in quarters. I ended up winning, but man, it was really tough against this guy. And then the guy in the semifinals was pretty much the same. So it was like two mirror matchups. Yeah, and the guy in the finals was a fucking tall, lanky cunt.
I hate them.
I mean, person.
That bleep that. That's a bit aggressive.
Nah, he's a good guy.
Yeah. So they're your tips, my tips, how to beat a bigger person. Really, the fundamental concept is understanding the matchup. Are you, in that particular matchup, are you the bigger person or are you the smaller person? And you've got your base attributes. And if you want your best chances to win, it's play the odds, right? Don't be afraid. And on the flip side, man, anyone who tells you like, oh, you use too much strength. I mean, depends in what context they say it. Like sometimes I might say to someone, oh, you use too much strength in the sense that you're literally just trying to bench press me off side control.
Yeah, you're spazzing.
Like, but like if someone says you use too much strength as in, you know, oh, your bridge is too explosive or something like that, like tell them to piss off, right? Like it's like trying to tell someone, oh, you rely too much on your flexibility. Like, I mean, you use the attributes you've got, you know? So that's how you beat the bigger, stronger opponent.
Damn.
Damn,
Well,
son.
on that note, thanks so much for listening. And just a quick shout out, congratulations to the winner of our rash guard competition. Last 2 episodes, we were plugging that. The winner has been announced as of today, I believe. So congratulations to you. And if you want to support the show, we do have a Patreon exclusive content on our Patreon. We do a monthly AMA. Adam does some technique reviews and rolling footage reviews and the like. So if you want to get amongst our Patreon, you can find a link to that on our Instagram bio at Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast _podcast.
Yeah.
At Beyond Jiu Jitsu _podcast.
And just a reminder, there's zero evidence that people want the belt changed to blue.
If you want the belt change, which I know you all do, it's driving everyone crazy. Message Beyond Jiu Jitsu _podcast on Instagram and address it to Adam. On that note, thanks for listening.
Later.